Hi everyone, in today's video I'll be taking a look at the use of colour in the underrated 2012 masterpiece A Place Beyond the Pines. Firstly, to get us started, what is meant by colour theory? Well, typically colour theory refers to the collection of rules and guidelines in which cinematographers communicate their messages through the use of colour schemes and palettes. Although colour is the most obvious thing on the screen to the viewer, it is commonly overlooked when it comes to its importance in the narrative of the film. So let's jump into this video by analysing the use of colour in the opening scenes of A Place Beyond the Pines. We'll see how the opening scene uses colour to foreshadow the coming events in the narrative. For those of you who haven't seen this movie, now is the time to dip out of the video as there will be spoilers up ahead. If you are dipping out, be sure to check out my other videos on Wasteful Media. Before we start analysing the opening scene, we need to get to grips with the basics of colour theory. When attempting to analyse the colour in a scene, it's important to focus on the following elements: the hue, which is the colour itself, saturation, the intensity of the colour, and brightness, the darkness or lightness of the colour. After we understand those basic concepts, we can move on to dissecting what they all mean on a deeper level. This can be done by viewing the different types of colour schemes used in the scenes and how they balance the movie colour palette. For instance, if a movie has a triadic colour scheme, we can assume it'll be balanced, upbeat, and a lively scene. However, if we're faced with a monochromatic colour scheme, we would expect lulling, cohesive, and deeply undivided scenes. These are just a couple examples to help you gain a better grasp on how to analyse colour and how it impacts a scene. Now we've got that out the way, let's move on to the opening scene of A Place Beyond the Pines. To understand the movie's opening scene is to understand the movie's narrative. Opening scenes are painted with brilliant strokes of information regarding the chain of events about to occur in the movie. The opening scene of A Place Beyond the Pines encapsulates much of the concept, tone, and atmosphere of the movie through its dynamic use of colour. It's a visually compelling spectacle that leads the audience down a path of interchangeable hues, saturations, and brightnesses. In A Place Beyond the Pines, we have to pay attention to what is being shown and what is not being shown through the use of colour theory. Impressions are everything when it comes to the opening scenes, as it sets the mood and atmosphere of the film. As a result of the opening scene, we digest the film based upon the assumptions we make in the first sequence. A whole world of association is built around the opening scene, and it's this network of associations which we refer to throughout the film to understand it. There are 7 main parts of the opening scene we'll be discussing. From the 7 parts, we'll gather vital insight into the coming events through the use of colour association. So let's begin with part 1, Inside the Caravan. We begin the sequence inside Luke's caravan. The most notable hue for the viewer is warm oranges and browns. These colours are feathered from light to dark. The side lamp causes the colours to ooze through the caravan and leave an amber glow. We're typically seeing secondary colours here, all of which complement each other and present a visually appeasing scene. The dominant reading of these colours is warmth. However, the darkness of these colours contradicts this and stirs up feelings of secrecy and unease. After taking a swatch from the scene, it's clear to see what type of colour spectrum we are dealing with. The warm colours are very important to remember as they follow Luke throughout his story. A scene that closely resembles the colour palette of Luke's caravan is Avery's hospital room. However, they are starkly different in 2 separate ways. For example, Avery is overwhelmed by the colour blue. Much like Luke's orange, Avery is followed by an overwhelming and persistent blue hue throughout his journey. Although the 2 scenes are not directly linked in terms of saturation, there is still an overwhelming similarity between the 2 colour palette hues. Most importantly, these scenes are the main introductory character moments for both Luke and Avery, thus setting up the future of each character in reference to their colour palette. Luke has warm colours, whereas Avery has cold colours. Moving on to part 2, Outside the Caravan. Moments after being introduced to Luke, we are thrust into the vibrant fairground environment. The lights pulse rays of saturated colour, awakening our senses and bringing the movie to life. The colours signify a joyous, happy and lively atmosphere. We also find a similar colour palette the moment Luke meets Jason for the first time, symbolising the same joy created in the fairground for the viewer. The fair was Luke's life and his only way to find purpose in life. However, this purpose is now placed upon Jason. Now let's move on to part 3, the vest top. The introduction of Luke's black tank top draws the audience into the darker palette. Black now takes up a substantial amount of the frame. These bleak colours Luke carries with him reveal themselves in his lowest moments. We see a similar colour palette the moment Luke decides to rob his first bank. Black is symbolic to him as it brings with it unease, poor decisions and sorrow whenever it is present. This is evident on Luke's bike when he paints it black, and also in his outfit for robbing banks. Let's move on to part 4, Luke's jacket. Colour is introduced into the scene by the presence of Luke's red jacket. The mise-en-scene graces the audience with warmth, vibrance, and energetic tones. In this instance, Luke's jacket embodies his happiness and mitigates both the happiness and sadness throughout his life. This same colour palette makes an appearance during the ice cream parlour scene, in which Luke, Romina, and Jason have ice cream together for the first time. Although the saturations of the colour palettes are not exactly the same, the overall hues are. At the carnival, Luke is overwhelmed by oversaturated hues. However, when he's found happiness again in his new family, the colours are desaturated and less intense, creating a soothing environment. Much like the presence of the jacket in the carnival, we are presented with both hopeful and despairing moods, as although Luke has found his new meaning in life, it will also bring his downfall. Part 5, An Ocean of Prizes. Moments later, the audience is plunged into a sea of analogous colours that nullify the senses. Cool colours such as blue, turquoise and purple contribute to an uneasy feeling. Although Luke walks through the prizes area, he remains blue and emotionless. Blue also connotes feelings of focus and sadness, which are both felt by the viewer throughout the movie. These colours and emotions are also found at Luke's death scene. The same colourway is used in this scene to stir up previously felt emotions. Analogous colours in this scene strip it from life, leaving it raw and to be felt. The only thing directing the audience's attention is Avery's facial expressions, centered perfectly in the frame. Luke once walked past all the prizes around him, however, he now lays lifeless by taking too many. Part 6, Inside the Arena. Inside the arena is where Luke finally comes alive, as he's connected back to his bike. Upon entering the arena, the environment ignites with flushes of red, blues and whites. The atmosphere is alive and pulsing with energy, created by the brightness of the colours present. If we look closely, we see Romina standing in the crowd cheering Luke on. The arena is where he finds his meaning in two ways, through his bike and through Romina. Likewise, this harmonious colour palette is used in the scenes where Jason finally reconnects with the past of his father, Luke. The colours are slightly more saturated to bring life into Jason's scene, however they are still almost identical to the arena scene. The most visible colour in Jason's scene is green, symbolising growth, harmony and healing for Jason, and his relationship with his father. The colour palette that used to be used by Luke is now passed on to Jason. And finally, part 7, the Globe of Death. Finally, to conclude our scene analysis, we'll look at the event which the entire opening has been built up to, the Globe of Death. The globe itself dominates the frame, filling it with dark reds, blues and greens. Although these colours are not sinister in themselves, the value in which they've been expressed is. By using a darker value, the entire scene has been shrouded in a veil of shadows. These shadows are associated with fear, the unknown, and death, connecting Luke with all of them. Dark green is also used to connect greed, ambition, and jealousy. The green tones are very subtle to the eye, but lead the palette more so than any other colour. We find the same colourway being used when Jason buys his first bike. However, the greens in this scene are being used to connote safety, free passage, and freshness. Jason was at a crossroads in which he too could have fell victim to the life of crime like his father did, but he managed to avert his gaze from this lifestyle and go to a place beyond the pines. Jason is not trapped in a perpetual cycle in a steel cage like his father. He is free to roam. A place beyond the pines colour theory conclusion. From the examples presented in today's video, we can acknowledge the pivotal role that colours play. If we step back and completely ignore the opening scene, we can still identify purposeful signification between characters and colours. It's important to understand colour in the opening scenes of movies in order to understand the broader meaning of the film. By applying colour theory to the opening sequence of films, we can dive deeper into the context of it. Colour theory also has a wider application in today's society. It can be used to analyse our social media, choice of books, or even our political standing. Although the ideas presented in today's video are subjective, it's important to rack your brain for deeper meaning and not taking things at face value. If you've enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a like and also don't forget to subscribe.